All right, I'm going to call this regular meeting of the LASD Board of Trustees to order. A recording and/or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording and/or broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. We'll start by calling the roll. Mr. Talio.
Here.
Ms. Spicer.
Here.
Ms. Sirke.
Here.
Mr. Ivanovich.
Here.
I am here. All members are present. Move on to D2, agenda approval. Does anyone want to make any comments or motions about the agenda?
I move that we accept the agenda.
Second.
Motion to accept the agenda made by Shally, seconded by Vladimir. Any further discussion? Not, I will do a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Valley?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yep.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the closed session report. No action was taken in closed session. So we'll move on to D4, superintendent's update. Mr. Baer.
Yes, good evening. A few items just to keep you abreast of what's happening. I'm sure you have seen the call for participants for the equity task force that went out. We are gathering interested names right now. I think the Google form is open until November 2, which is Monday after following this weekend. So we'll have information to report back as soon as the group forms. Also, just want to let you know that LASD Plus, which we reported on in a previous board meeting, that is up and running now at 2 of our schools, at Almond and at Santa Rita. We're looking to start at Egan very soon. So that's good news. And then lastly, Halloween is coming up this weekend. We have been reminding families about safe Halloween activities during COVID, really wanting to limit large community interactions. I know it puts a cramp in the style of our typical Halloween, but that is where we are. So we'll be sending out reminders about that. We also have it posted on our website, linking to the Santa Clara County Public Health Department guidance on that topic. So yeah, those are the items, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to section E, the consent agenda. Any board members like to make any comments or motions about consent items E1 through E3?
I'd like to move that we approve consent items E1 through E2 as presented. E3.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Motion made to accept the consent items E1 through E3, made by Vladimir, seconded by Shally. I'll call the roll. Steve?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Shally?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. Move on to section F, employee request to address the board. Los Altos Teachers Association, Kate Skirmerhorn, I see is here.
Hello, good evening. I think I'm unmuted now. Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to address the board. My name is Kate Skirmerhorn, and I'm newly elected to LATA as one of the LATA vice presidents. Until this year, I've taught 6th grade at Covington Elementary School, and this year I'm teaching 3rd grade at the virtual school. So I just wanted to say that as a new member of the LATA exec board, I've had the opportunity to widen my lens and hear more about how teachers are adapting to connect and support their students during this time. And as we know, this is a year unlike any other, and there are many complex and difficult decisions being made and new challenges that require the patience and flexibility and clear communication from everyone in the learning community as we figure out how to forge our path forward. And while some of our paths might look different, we all know we're in this together and striving towards the common goal of doing what's best with our students and families. And our teachers are staying committed to doing what we can for our students. Update, just teachers across the district right now are working hard to prepare for those student shifts between hybrid and virtual school programs and preparing for November conferences and feedback to discuss student progress with families. So It's important work, it takes time. And like I said, our teachers are dedicated and I'm proud to help represent them. And thank you for the opportunity for me to formally introduce myself and address the board tonight. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Marcy, I see we have another hand up. Is that a CSEA representative? Do you know?
I don't believe so. Jeff?
I don't think so. We can check.
Okay, I'm going to assume that that's a community comment then and move on to that section. Section G, community comments. This time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. So we will now take such public comment. To offer such comment, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. So go ahead, Ms. Ng.
First speaker is Carmen Ng.
I think you need to unmute yourself. It looks like you put your hand back down. Anyone else want to offer a comment? I hope that wasn't technical difficulty. If it was, I apologize. Please feel free to email us, trustees@lasdschools.org, if we lost you. But in absence of another hand, we'll move on to action discussion items. H1, report on opening of schools. Staff will provide updates on the status of students in grades TK through first, returning to in-person learning, as well as updates on any upcoming key events. Mr. Baer.
Yes, hello again. Wanted to just walk the board through current reopening and let you know of some goings on. So next slide, Marcy. So we do have students back in blended learning classrooms. You know, we have our SDC students back on September 28th. TKK and first grade students came back on the 12th. We also have, as I said a moment ago, LASD Plus up and running at both Almond and Santa Rita. Egan soon to follow, and I think we have a second cohort planned for Almond as well. And then we're looking forward and getting prepared for November 9th when our second and third graders will return to campus. I've had the benefit of substitute principaling at 2 of our schools over the last 2 weeks, and it is great to see students back on campus. They are definitely excited to be there, and our teachers and school staffs are just doing a tremendous job ensuring that everyone remains safe while school continues in person. So next slide. Sandra?
Sure. So I wanted to let you know that our report card and parent-teacher conferences are coming up. 'Tis the season, as Kate mentioned. And so we've done a few little shifts because of the fact of the program switches happening in November. So our timeline is a little bit different than in the past, but not much. So at the end of the quarter, actually happened this past Friday, and the trimester ends at the end of this week. So report cards will be sent to parents in November, which is typical, but we might be about a week off. This year we will be holding, despite having some students back on campus, all of our parent-teacher conferences will be held via Google Meet. So we want to be really clear that we're following that good protocol of keeping people off of campus. So throughout the month of November, prior to Thanksgiving, our parents will have an opportunity to check in with their teacher and perhaps their student, depending on grade level. And those meetings will be happening before or after school, or possibly during the day on Wednesdays if teachers choose to do that. And it's important to know that third bullet there, that if a student is making a program switch November 9th, they will get the report card from their current teacher, but the conference will be held with their new teacher as of November 9th. And we're really encouraging teachers to do those conferences kind of later in the month of November, so they do have some time to get to know student. And we're really encouraging that the conference be very much goal-oriented, knowing that this learning environment is trickier than ever, that we really want to see how students have been making progress this year and what type of growth, but really look at it as a goal-setting opportunity for the next chunk of time with those classrooms. And junior high, you know, we typically have that one day where people convene on our junior high campuses. Of course, we won't be doing that this year. So we will be throughout the month of November, again, before and after school, our junior high teachers will be holding conferences. And we're really this year focused on those students with the greatest need, who are need that one-on-one time with their teacher. So our teachers at junior high schools will be inviting families to come for a conference during the month of November. Next slide. I think that was all on there. And the next piece we wanted to talk about were a couple of different social and emotional surveys happening. We know that this is especially critical during a time when we're living through a pandemic and school does not look like it normally does. So we have partnered with Hanover to develop a parent and teacher survey around social and emotional health and wellness. So all of our teachers are currently taking that survey, and it has been, I believe, Jeff, already sent out to families, and we do hope that all of our families will participate. This is an opportunity for parents to report out on the social and emotional wellness of their children of all ages throughout our district. And then we will be continuing in the late winter our typical social and emotional survey that we do through the county office, where the student in grades 3 through 8 actually report on their own social and emotional wellness and needs. And that will give us, I think this will be our third year to have those data points, which will be really nice to see over time how those trends might be changing. So we are encouraging both all of our staff and our families to participate in the one that's currently in progress. And it will allow us to really think about the services that we are providing to make sure that all of our folks are supported in what they need. Next slide, Marcy.
So I thought the board would want to see the number of students, number of families that have selected in-person versus virtual school. You can see the top two rows, kinder and first grade, the percentages of families that have chosen blended or in person, and the percentage in virtual. And then dropping down to second and third grade, you can see the shift that's going to occur on November 9th, with currently about 17% of families choosing virtual. That's going to increase to 28%. And then the comparative data set with third grade, currently 14% choosing virtual. That'll move to 21%. Overall, the kindergarten through third grade numbers, what we generally refer to as our primary grade students, as a whole, those are going to run about 25-75, including our SDC students, actually. So 75% in-person selection or blended selection, and 25% remaining virtual. And you can see where our 4th and 5th and 6th grade numbers currently are. We will see how those move over time. All right, next slide. So grade 6 through 8, as we've said in previous meeting, because of the nature of the grade levels, the leveling of mathematics, the multiple teachers involved, different than grades TK through 5. This is really requiring a great deal of effort and planning in order to develop a program that works for students and their academic and social needs, as well as attends to the safety requirements put forth by Santa Clara County Public Health Department, because it does get more complicated in 7th and 8th grade, and 6th grade for us, because we do treat it like a junior high school of sorts on an elementary campus. As I talk to high school counterparts, these are the exact same problems they're wrestling through. So comparing notes on how we're going to accomplish this is helpful with high school districts, because it looks a lot more like high school than it actually looks like elementary school with regard to the public health guidelines. So 6th grade, I know Sandra has met with 6th grade teachers. Sandra, maybe a few words about that.
Sure, we met for our second time today, just doing some brainstorming and understanding with the rotations that currently happen. And as you may know, not all of our schools mirror exactly each other in 6th grade on who teaches what. So it does certainly have an additional complication, and the 6-8 need for students and staff to remain 6 feet away at all times really adds an additional layer of complexity. But we're making some progress, and the teachers are happy to be involved.
And same with 7th and 8th grade. Our junior high school principals have assembled representative teams from each school. Sandra has now joined those meetings as well, doing similar work, planning for that schedule and the complexities of that schedule. They've met 3 or 4 times now, with the goal, the target of coming to the board at the next meeting on November 9th with presentation, ready to take feedback and tweak as necessary. And then later that week, having a town hall or town halls with junior high school parents as well as staff to talk through that. So that's all coming up pretty quickly, especially with the junior high schools. Once that is done, there is the added layer of actually building the schedule within the student information system and then populating it. It sounds simple, but there is a great deal of time and attention spent on the scheduling of students, making sure balance and equity are achieved in the makeup of each of those classes. So that is coming next board meeting, we anticipate. Next slide. So as we look ahead, I just want the board and the community to be aware of what we see on the horizon and what we are attending to as we go through our planning. Substitute teachers, certainly something we are continuing to recruit. We have somewhere between 15 and 20, as I counted today, substitute teachers able to work, willing to work, having gone through our training. So those substitutes are being utilized as necessary right now. I think I've mentioned before, we're continuing to build that group because we are one of the few districts back to in-person learning right now and needing substitute teachers as other school districts around us come back online, likely in January. There will be, there will be polls on those same people who are substituting, because they generally don't only substitute for us, but they are also have their name in the pool in neighboring districts as well. As we make these shifts to blended learning with bringing kids back on campus, it does create disruption. And we're conscious of that, and we really work to minimize that. We have about 29 second graders moving from their initial selection of in-person or blended to virtual, and about 39 third graders doing that same shift. That switched around 39 second graders and 29 third graders. That does, that does create stress on the system. As we move students, oftentimes we have to move teachers as well, and that can be very disruptive. We know it's very disruptive. So we really look to minimize those disruptions as best we can. So it's I just want to acknowledge that it is not easy on families, and it's not easy on staff, but it's what we're doing to take care of all involved during the operations of school in a pandemic. We are also, as I've mentioned a couple times, getting our LASD Plus programs up and running to support our most disadvantaged students. That includes the hiring of classified staff to supervise those LASD Plus classroom. They're not classrooms, but groups. And so that hiring is ongoing. Aaron Green is really running point on that. Again, really working to identify high quality folks, and there aren't as many people applying for those positions as there would be in a typical year. But we are finding as many as we need right now. So I'm just looking ahead to the expansion across all campuses. It's really the scaling of these two things, substitutes and LASD Plus, that present challenges as we need more staff to grow those programs. Sandra, do you want to talk just a little bit about the learning loss idea?
Sure. It is a very interesting idea, the concept of learning loss, and really that there have been multiple research groups who have tried to really define what school districts might anticipate as learning loss goes from last March until whatever this school year, however long we remain in some sort of distance and or hybrid and or virtual learning. And for us locally, really trying to understand, because our assessments look very different than they have in the past. And a lot of our work is around comparing apples to oranges. So as we get some of our classes back on campus, we are able to go back to our more typical assessments, like our Fontes and Pinnell that we report out to the board each year. We can't do that in a remote environment. We can only do that in person. And I think our teachers would agree that the current reading assessment we're using is not quite as robust as the F&P that we're used to. And so I'm hesitant to compare tools that are not similar. So yeah, we're working to really understand how our students are performing and where we need to provide supports. I think that's kind of the most important work that we're doing right now, and our teachers are working with their students directly, and really perhaps shifting the focus to what have I taught, how are they making progress, and how do I need to fill those gaps along the way. So we will continue to have discussions around learning loss for sure.
Next slide. So just a reminder, you've seen this slide. I won't read through it again, but these are all of the areas to which we're attending, making sure that we are doing everything we can to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And next slide. And this is just a reminder of the return dates and switch dates. A couple of tweaks I think that'll help. First one I'll just point out was an error in the far lower right-hand corner. It was said March 26th previously, which was a Friday, and we're not having the kids return on a Friday, so it's the 29th actually for that switch. The second is in the purple column for all grades, the top purple where it says December 7th. We think it makes most sense to give parents of 4th and 5th graders until December 18th. Those 4th and 5th graders will be returning for the first time on December 7th, and not sure parents will be able to really make an informed decision after one day of their children attending in-person learning. So we think it makes sense to give them that 2 weeks before the holiday break to really think about it and submit a change request if that's what they'd like to do. So we're extending that window for the 4th and 5th grade students, families. All right, that is the last slide. Happy to answer any questions board might have.
All right, thank you. Are there any preliminary board questions? Library?
Yes, Jeff, the last two lines on the last slide, the ones that have all grades.
Yep.
How is that different from the lines above it? I mean, and the dates are different, some of them.
Right, so the idea here is that grade levels have made parents and students in the various grade levels have made their initial request to switch. And as opposed to pinning them down for the entire year, recognizing that originally we talked about every 6 weeks. After having gone through this for a couple of iterations, I talked about disruption earlier. That's too frequent for all involved. So these other two dates, I have to get back and see it, the January 20th and March 29th dates, as opposed to having every 6 weeks throughout the balance of the school year. Those are two gates we've established where parents could decide that I've been in virtual, I want to make the switch to blended now, and I'll let the school know by March 8th so that on March 29th, my child can come back in person, or vice versa.
Okay, thanks. One more question is, how many kids do we have in LASD Plus, roughly? Or Sandra?
We probably have about 16 between the two schools right now. More students being added this week. It's really an outreach effort. Is I would say, I wouldn't call it a hurdle, but it's just part of the process. Is contacting families directly and having conversations with them. So we started with, for instance, we started with 4 at Almond last week. They're bringing back on board another 6 this week. Santa Rita, I think, has 5 or 7 in place right now. So.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Or Shally? Go ahead.
Just a quick clarifying question about LASD plus. I know that the outreach, the teachers identify the kids that they would like to see in LASD plus, but can a parent, like maybe through these parent-teacher conferences, request that their child be placed in LASD plus? Does it work both directions?
So Sandra, you can probably talk in more detail about this, but we're actually identifying and talking to the parents, right? Because it's the teachers who are seeing the academic impact of, and this is largely right now, the students who Sandra is going to talk about in the next presentation, right? These are the kids we're talking about, the kids who just aren't engaging, aren't signing on to their meets. We've gone through a number of steps to try to get them engaged, and it just hasn't worked to this point. So that's really the group of kids we're looking at, is looking at that data right now.
Anything else before we go to public comment? And then we'll come back for further discussion. All right, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press star 9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Do we have anyone? Not seeing anyone, we will return for further board discussion. Oh, sorry, we do have one. Thank you, Jessica. So each speaker will be given 3 minutes.
Our first speaker is Margaret Pettit.
I think you did.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, great.
Yes.
Thank you very much. First, I want to say thank you for this huge Herculean task you are taking on. I do appreciate all the hard work and of the teachers and the staff as well at each of the individual schools. I just do want to talk about my discouragement at having the date pushed back for the upper grades getting into the schools. I understand about the need for the trimester, that totally makes sense. Just the need for the 3 weeks in between those two strikes me only as a administrative time, which I mean is needed, but I don't think the safety and security or the health procedures are going to change in between the second and third graders and the fourth and fifth graders coming. I mean, I've seen our school's plan. It seems really well done and thought out. And just so please, you've changed it once. I do have the fear that it will be pushed back even further. And then those kids have not been in school for over 250 days at that point. And so in taking away 2 days when they're, when they're going to be in school 6 days for this whole, semester, before the end of the year, that's a lot. And so please just keep that in mind. And it's more just the need for the being a part of classroom. I mean, it's really just the social emotional aspect of it. And even if my student is doing fine, but I couldn't imagine many other students who have working parents or work parents out of the household. So please just keep in mind the impact of even taking away 2 days for these kids who have not been in school for such a long time. But thank you again for all your work and consideration.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing any other speakers, so now we will return for further board discussion. Who would like to go first? Anyone? Jessica?
Quick question, based a little bit on Margaret's comment. Do we think, I do understand why we pushed the dates, and I'm all for what we did. Do you feel that our dates for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders seem, barring some public health travesty going forward, are going to be kept at this point?
I do. I think I think we've allowed the the time necessary to get to get all of the pieces in place. We've talked about the complexities, so I don't see I don't see a need to push those back,
Thank you.
or nor anticipate when.
Anyone else? Okay, I just had a couple of questions / comments. Jeff, you mentioned talking to the high school district. I know that I don't know if this is true of both high schools, but I know at Los Altos High, there's been sort of a group of parents, and I'm not sure how, but that got deputized to kind of be representatives of the parents generally to the administration as they work through all of these things. And I just wonder if we have a feedback mechanism like that for the junior high schools, or if one is contemplated. It just sort of observing from a distance, it seems useful in the sense that rather than being bombarded by 100 unhappy parents, there's sort of a funnel mechanism there that's just sort of a little bit more of a volume issue at the junior highs than at the elementary than at our elementary schools, where we also don't necessarily have sort of the PTA framework that we have at the elementary school. So that's a little bit more of a comment than a question. I don't know if you have worked on that, but I do think it would be useful to the extent that we can to make sure that we get parent feedback sort of during this whole planning process, right, prior to the unveiling. And then my other question, which I think is more for Sandra, is just sort of in terms of our future meetings and updates. It would be great to get a sense either November on sort of whether LASD Plus is working, we think, whether we're seeing those kids be more engaged the way we hope they will be. If November is too early, maybe December, but also, again, I don't know if December is too early, but and I understand the apples and oranges with the assessments and all that, but I wonder if we could get sort of a year-over-year report based on the report cards and sort of the standards-based grading. Like ideally, we should be able to sort of see this year versus previous years, sort of where those standards assessments are. Obviously, it won't be perfect, but I wonder if that's a possibility.
Yeah, and yes, I think one big challenge that I know our teachers have expressed around assessment in this virtual realm is to what degree is there parent support happening, right? We're suddenly getting kindergartners who are writing paragraphs and turning in paragraphs of perfectly spelled writing. And the intention of parents is outstanding to help their child, but it doesn't really give our teachers a clear picture of what an individual student can do independently. So I will look at that, Brian. I haven't thought about the report card comparison, but yeah, it is certainly a challenge, but that is a great idea. I will explore.
Yeah, I admit it hadn't really occurred to me that I've got the problem with parents getting too much help since my kids are older than that. So they won't even accept any help from me at this point. I can see how that would happen. Okay, any other board comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to H2, attendance update. Mrs. McGonigal will share data for attendance from the start of the school year.
Excellent. So Marcy will get our presentation up. So I have been spending lots of time in Data Zone looking at the actually very well created graphs and information as we think about our LASD Plus students and who we want to ensure have opportunities to come and work on campuses, as we think about learning loss, as we just worry about kind of how students are performing in this realm. Attendance is one area that we're looking at. So next slide, Marcy. just to give you the very high level snapshot, of course, now we have 10 schools. As of whatever day this was last week, October 20th, we had 3568 students. And you can see over the course of the year, we're running at a very high attendance. And you may remember late last year, I mentioned how our attendance was even better when we moved into emergency remote learning. So we remain somewhere between 98 and 99% of students attending. And this is from October 20th to the start of the year. So next slide. We can actually, next slide, Marcy. Thank you. It was really interesting to look at how our attendance has changed over time. So this is a lot of information here, but you're looking at 4 school years. With 2021, of course, we're only about 40 something days into the school year. But the pieces that I want you to pay attention to are those red and orange markers. So our severe chronic absences, which means a student has missed more than 20% of the days where we expect them to go to school. And then you have the orange moderate chronic absences, where students are missing at least 10% of the expected school days. Again, we're only into about 45 school days. If I had a first grade or a kindergarten teacher out there, they'd tell me the exact number of days. But it is really interesting to see in 2017, 2018, we had 133 students who were in that orange marker, and 23 in the chronic realm. This year, we're really looking at a combined 59 students who are hitting that mark. Again, we're early into the school year, and we know historically this is any attendance, any absence whatsoever. So we've had, families who might go on a week vacation or a three-week independent study, a wide variety of things, but we do know the access to distance learning has allowed students to attend school when they're not feeling well, when their family might be on a trip of some sort, what have you. But so the number I want you to pay attention to is those 59 students. So next slide. A little bit of demographic around who is making up. These are those 59 students. So the student counts, right? You can see 12 of those 59 students are Hispanic, 31 are white, 7 are Asian. So again, just a data point of interest. Next slide, Marcy. And then looking by grade level, again, these are those 59 students. So how they span out over all of our grades. Third grade, those third graders are really attending school. We have the least amount of chronic absenteeism happening in third grade. So of these 59 students, what we're trying to understand is how are they performing academically, right? And is there chronic absence, knowing that in 2017, 2018, we had greater chronic absence than we do today? It's really working with our principal and our school teams to understand how that chronic absenteeism intersects with their academic performance and their social and emotional health, of course. So next slide. When we actually look at, this was as of October 20th, when we look at the number of school days, that 59 students actually becomes a smaller number. So we've actually, on this lower right-hand side, we've had we have had 6 students miss 16 or more days. And 16 or more days when we've only had 40 is a big problem. Right? We've had 2 students who've missed between 11 and 15 days and 34 students who've missed more than 6 or more days. So that 59 here, you can see how they are represented, and it turns into, what did I say, about 42 students. Am I doing my math correctly? Yep. 42 students. We do have 655 students who've missed 1 to 5 days, but as I've been chatting with principals and sending them reports of students who they need to keep an eye on, some of these students have legitimate excuses. Right at the very beginning of the school year, they might have been having some tech difficulties. They might have actually been ill, right, and have an excused absence. So we're really down to that 42 students in the red box who we are looking at very closely. And principals know each one by name and are working to understand their story and working with teachers to understand the impact. And as we look to see who we want to invite to our LASD plus groups, I will tell you that those 6 students in the big, most of them were invited. There's one interesting tidbit about one that doesn't matter, but those are the students that we're really targeting first. We had, I don't mean it didn't matter, but we had a student who had missed more than half of the school days. And so that student is absolutely back. And I can imagine that their learning trajectory is changing for sure, because now they have just kind of the routines in place to be hopefully a more successful learner. Next slide. I can't remember if I have one more slide. Oh yeah, there we go. So as principals are working with their school teams and looking closely at their reports, they are really using our tiered re-engagement plan. Some of that we've talked about has been proactive. We've looked at the data from the spring and we knew that we had students who were struggling. So immediately before school even started, we had a mentor assigned to that student. But as new people kind of pop up and are showing signs of chronic absenteeism, we really are utilizing our great care teams at our school sites and developing a plan of support for students. We had a great conversation in our principal LC3 meeting on Thursday about the many very creative ways that principals and school teams are supporting families to make sure that students are attending school, even if they are still virtual and unable to join us. So we are looking at the possibility of hiring a family engagement person who will help us reach out to families who are really struggling with having their child attend school virtually. So that person would likely begin to do home visits when the phone calls are really not making a difference. So how can we have a person who's really dedicated to chronic absenteeism and supporting families and supporting school teams as an additional resource and outreach, which is terrific. And then of course we have our LASD plus targeted support that has already started, and we're working to expand as quickly as we possibly can through hiring right now, and really focusing in on those students who are most chronically absent and need that stability and routine of coming to school each day to re-engage in learning. So our school principals are working and working together to really develop those plans that will support students moving forward. So I really like the idea. I can't remember if it was Vladimir or Brian who talked about how can we really measure the success of our LASD plus program. So that's something that I look forward to working with our principals on, so we can see those numbers around chronic absenteeism change. And then ultimately we want their academic performance of our students who are participating to improve. That is the goal. I think that might have been my last slide, Marcy. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Preliminary questions from the board. I had a couple just, so just so I'm clear, I think you said this is both excused and unexcused absences?
Yep, any
reason. Okay, and then my other question was, just how are we mapping on, because the state now has this kind of 4-tier attendance thing. So D0, was it D? I can't remember. So is this, when you talk about an absence here, is that just D0 or is that like the bottom two?
Well, these particular absences are any absence because attendance has really changed over time. You know, we used to call kids truant if they had unexcused absences, but really the world of absenteeism has changed. And it's even if they're excused absences, it's critical that students are attending school. So these
Right.
numbers here are specific to any absence, but when we are working with principals and identifying students with issues, we're really digging down into understanding why a student has an absence and how we can help kind of change the trajectory of those absences.
So
Sure,
Sandra,
I think-
mapping it though, are these DL0s, DL3s, both?
They would be both.
Okay,
Yes.
great. I think that's probably the right thing to do. I mean, I think the DL3 is sort of half present. And so
Right.
I was going to argue that we should be counting those
Oh.
kind of in these buckets. So great.
Yeah,
I'm
and
glad to
we
hear that we
are
are.
asking those, we separated those two out and we are asking our attendance clerks to clear each of the DL3s, just like they clear the DL0s to really understand. You know, you might have turned in a piece of work, but if you didn't show up for any of your live classes, we want to understand why.
If there aren't any other pressing board questions, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Do we have anyone who wishes to comment on this item? I don't see anyone, so we will return for further board discussion. Any other comments, Vladimir?
Sandra, just a couple of quick questions. On slide 4, you have who's affected by poor attendance, the pie chart. Is there any, do you have enough information to break that down by demographic groups? In other words, the 31 students who happen to be white, is that a larger percentage or a smaller percentage than, let's say, the Latino students? That's the thing that I'm interested in there.
Yeah, I can look at that and send that to you.
Yeah, it's if you have it and it's easy to get a hold of, then fine. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. The other question I had was, do all our students, as far as we know, have access to a computer, a place to work where they can work sort of like without their siblings or their parents being in their face all the time, and also have access to the internet?
So the first and the last of what you said, we do know that all of our families who need access to a computer and to internet have that. Our teachers did an excellent job at the start of the year when they were meeting with families to understand what those needs were, and we deployed those tech needs. But I also certainly know that we do have students who might have multiple siblings in a small apartment and they're all going to school at the same time. So we are supporting families as we can. I know over at Santa Rita, that was really a priority for Mr. Land to bring families who perhaps didn't have the quietest workspace.
Yeah.
All together, full families of several siblings together into LASD Plus. So we really could provide a more focused workspace for them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all. Thanks a lot.
Along the lines of Vladimir's question, also a breakdown of socioeconomic. So at least I guess knowing how many are free and reduced lunch kids.
Yep, I'll work on that.
Thank you.
Other comments? Don't see any. So, oh, Vladimir, do you have one more? No.
This is just on the reopening processes and operations, physical distancing cohorts, 6 feet, 25 feet. Where does the 25 feet come from?
The 25 feet comes into play when those groups the cohorts are outside for lunch or recess. They need to maintain cohorts need to maintain distance from one
You
another.
measure it from the center of gravity of the cohort, or?
We do
Never mind.
we do
All right.
geotagging. No.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I think that is the end of this item. So I think we will move on to board and administration comments. I'm just going to go top to bottom here. Steve. Nope. Jessica.
I went to a couple PTA meetings, did Covington and Block. I continue to be very impressed with our parent community and what they're doing in this craziness too. And very thankful for their support. And also at each one of these, the principal is presenting, and I'm impressed with those principal and every principal that we have. They're dealing with a lot of turmoil and change and disruption, and they're handling it with grace. I enjoy going to these meetings just to see how everything's going. I'm just impressed with what I'm seeing on all fronts.
Great. Sandra.
I'll just say I continue to work with both our junior high group and our 6th grade group around reopening. Those are my big meetings last week and more this week.
Charlie. All right. Vladimir.
I guess attended a webinar on California's Cradle to Career Data System, which was actually quite interesting. The idea is to be able to track a child right from the very beginning all the way through to when they get a job. And in fact, sometimes even further than that. And the intent is to be able to use that information to make better decisions about education. And we're sadly lacking in that area. So I think that part's great. The part that's not quite so great is it hasn't even been funded yet. So this is just a preliminary work groups that are looking at various different aspects. And the other part, which I found, they do, by the way, the work that they have done, they've broken into like 5 or 6 different committees, is really actually very detailed. But I have some doubts about their understanding of the security aspects of this. And my feeling is that, you know, if the President of the United States, the CIA, and the NSA can't keep secrets, then they're not going to be able to keep secrets either. And so that brings up the question of what kind of information is eventually going to make it out there. So I hope that they pay a little bit more attention to that. But right now, I would urge more thought on that. But other than that, I think it's great. It's going in the right direction. It's like our data zone, but on steroids.
Okay, Randy, anything?
Just let you know, I have a Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance meeting on Wednesday night. That's it.
Okay. Jeff?
Just a daylight savings time reminder, next weekend, it'll get dark early. Also, just letting you know, I am participating in the Mountain View Resiliency Roundtable, really looking at support services for the community in general. And I bring the school focus to that group. Mayor Abe Koga is leading that group. So that takes place about, I think it's once a month, last Wednesday of the month. So that's coming up this week. Also, appreciated what Jessica said about just our parents and what they've contributed, and really working in this in this highly unusual situation. I'll really say the same for our staff, our teachers and support staff. Just incredible work. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. When I look in comparison to other school districts in the area, in the county, on the peninsula, our people are doing just incredible work, and our kids are the beneficiaries of it. But I'm so appreciative for what our teachers are doing in the classrooms each day, or online each day, or a little of both. So big thanks to them.
Certainly second all of that. And I think the only thing I have, the other board members should all be aware, there's the Santa Clara County School Board Association fall, not dinner, fall Zoom call this Wednesday evening, where they'll be introducing new superintendents and celebrating departing board members, of which we have neither. So, but I'm planning on attending anyway.
Celebrating the departure of board members?
Yeah, exactly. Congratulating them on their departure. So I think, not seeing anything else, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you
Bye.
everybody for attending.
Night.